What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Entertainment. Continuing with our review of the Black Mirror series, Season 7. The third episode is titled Hotel Reverie, and it is a throwback episode that not only talks about remakes and talks about classic films and the film industry, but also is kind of a remake or a retread in some ways of a previous episode of Black Mirror. Before we get into that, however, as I will remind you, as other YouTubers always remind you guys, YouTube loves that algorithm. It is working off of Black Mirror magic itself. So when you hit the like button, when you hit the subscribe button, when you hit the notification bell, it helps other people who like Black Mirror know about this video. I appreciate it very much. On to the review. So this episode centers around actress Brandy Friday, played by Issa Rae, who stars in a remake of a 1940s romance film by acting in a real-life simulation alongside AI versions of the characters through an immersive AI-based virtual production. Hotel Reverie received critical acclaim with praise towards Ray's performance and the visuals, as well as the more somber and bittersweet tone compared to the previous episodes. There's this film producer, and she's still in charge of this studio that has all these old movies, but nobody watches them anymore. And she has this millennial tech something wizard come in, and they're like, hey, well, there's something in new content. And, the movie people don't like their movies being called content, but the opportunity was presented to make some money from Hotel Reverie again and a remake. So instantly you get the commentary on remakes, which is a thing that's been rampant in Hollywood for 15 years plus now. You also get commentary on classic movies. This is a kind of a commentary on Turner classic movies. And, there was a big controversy back in the day about them colorizing movies like this. But this is Black Mirror, so they got to take it to another level of effed upness. And it's not deep fakes. It's not just a remake. It's not colorizing old classics. We're going to take it to another frightening nightmare future, which may or may not be on its way. Meanwhile, we catch up with Brandy, who is an actress, the A-list actress. This is really her story. And she's, very successful, but she's limited to two roles. She can play the damsel in distress or the sidekick. And she doesn't want to play that anymore. She wants to play something else. She wants to gender swap. We get a little bit of an indication from her interaction with her male person that she had a prior relationship, but she was no longer with that person. And she does look a bit melancholy in all of the scenes. So she accepts, through her agent, the job with Hotel Reverie remake. She's very excited because she loves those old kind of Casablanca type of films. However, she wants to play the male lead as herself, as a female. So that leads to her getting the role because, unfortunately, for the for the people trying to produce this remake, nobody else wants to be in it, but they're lucky that Brandy was a fan. So that sets us up for Brandy now entering into this AI simulation where they replay Hotel Reverie in real time, but she will now be taking in the place of the male lead, and everyone else in this AI construct will act accordingly. So my overall thoughts before we get into spoilers is I really like this episode. It was a little slow in the beginning of me kind of figuring out where exactly it's going. I do know there's some political tones into this, so be aware. There's people are very, very, very sensitive about their politics today, so people are going to bring that up if you talk to people online about this. But overall, this was a bittersweet, like I said, it's a bittersweet, beautiful story that does have echoes to other things, not just within of itself. There's so many layers of fourth wall breaking in this episode. It's pretty interesting. But now let's get into the spoilers. So you have been warned. So as Brandy enters in and they start the movie, and in real time for 90 minutes they're going to act out this whole thing kind of like a stage play, she's amazed at how realistic this is. Now the technology used here is very similar to the technology we've seen in prior Black Mirror episodes, White Christmas, of course USS Callister, and on again. This is not new. It's that little disc that they put on the side of people's heads that puts them into these virtual reality worlds. That is how Brandy is able to get in here through the company called Redream, which is selling. The whole premise is that they can remake these movies at a cheaper cost because all they have to do is put a new actor in the body or in the place of the character, and we can recreate the whole world virtually. So you can do that, and that is technology that I absolutely could see coming around the corner. Imagine you get to go and be Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi and actually be Luke Skywalker and have everyone treat you as if you're Luke Skywalker and go on the same adventure. Or if you're into like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you've always wanted to be Buffy, you could go into Buffy and play that whatever movie, whatever franchise, whatever TV show you want. Since Hollywood's running out of ideas, maybe the thing to be is to sell people now going into the experiences, since they can't seem to come up with too many new ones that captivate the public. But that's my commentary on that. So Brandy is in here. She's having interactions with everybody. She's not really doing a great job. She can't play the piano. She's supposed to play the piano. She's like, I never really knew how to play the piano. So it kind of starts messing up the storyline, because the AIs need to act as if the story that was written for them, that they're programmed for, is actually happening. And if Brandy deviates from the course, then all things kind of mess up and the plot can change. And so in the real world, they've got their actual team. There's the tech guys and the script people, and they're all monitoring what's going on. And if Brandy goes off course a little bit, they have to correct it. And this happens so many times that there's a mad scramble for them sometimes when she can't play the piano, because that's supposed to set up other things that will happen in the story. And if they don't, then they have to start all over again. So Brandy kind of makes up for this, but she does a very weird thing when she goes after the main female lead in this story. She calls her by a name. In the story, her name is Clara, but she refers to her as Dorothy. And this throws off the Clara AI a little bit. And then as you see, as the story goes along, the Clara character starts to gain agency. And when this is fully realized is when one of the techs accidentally spills, which they foreshadowed at the beginning of this, spilled some liquid on his computer. It shut down the system. So everything in this system shuts down, and it's just Brandy and Clara, which is your first indication that Clara, because she didn't shut down, had reached some level of sentience. At this point, Brandy's freaking out because, she's stuck in this simulation, and she's kind of letting Clara know that, this is not real. You're just a character played by this actress, and yada, yada, yada. So Clara, who it doesn't occur to Brandy or anybody else, why is she still active when everybody else is frozen? She leaves, finds out that the world actually is fake. When she breaks through the scenery, she's in the main data area, as one of the texts described, where she gets to see, oh yeah, this is true. She's in a computer. She is a construct of a performance of an actress who wound up committing suicide because she was a closeted lesbian back in the 1940s and couldn't be with the woman that she really loved, who was on the set, and had to pretend she was in this traditional heterosexual love affair. So we come back into the computer world, the movie simulation, and Brandy and, I guess we should call her Dorothy at this point, start to develop a relationship. But because the computer's stuck, time is going by a lot slower for them, or a lot faster depending on your perspective, than it is in the real world. So they wind up spending months, maybe even a year or two together while the tech team tries to sort things out. They finally get things sorted out, but by that point, Brandy and Dorothy have developed a real relationship within this virtual reality world, where even Brandy's kind of like, is this real, or are you just programmed to love me? Which is, again, another question that we ask, another question that Black Mirror is asking here. And does it matter? Are we all living in a simulation? That's kind of what it's asking. And if we are, or if there's such a thing as fate, then is this emotion real, or are we just programmed to have it? And then again, like I said, the question is, does it really matter? That doesn't go too far, because the team gets the computers back up, and Clara is now separate, is back to being Clara, and Brandy is there, and they're back to a prior scene. But Brandy is now acting a lot different. She's acting a little bit more natural. In fact, she's kind of said F the whole story, which she was doing a lousy job of playing. If you looked at this movie as the actual movie they shot with this redream thing, and her acting is terrible. And I think it's funny because you could look at it, I don't know what the writer's intentions were, you could look at that as a commentary on how a lot of these remakes, you get recasting, you get regendering, you get race swapping, and then the performer who's taking the place of the prior performer doesn't do as good a job within the context of the story that they were telling, but they're going to try to tell something of their own. through a lot of twists and turns, it is now incumbent upon Brandy to figure out a way to get to the final scene, because she's now stuck in this virtual reality world because the computers got screwed up. They also discover that Clara's character has some remnants of the actual Dorothy's consciousness, which is, we're getting a little tech magic here, where there's kind of saying that because the actress had put so much of herself into the role that there are threads of her real personality in there, and that apparently Brandy, by calling her by her real name, awakened this, and that's why Clara's character has sentience. So they redo the ending, which actually is a lot more of a dramatic ending, although there's more to talk about that when I get into references and stuff at the end. But Brandy is not able to save Clara. Clara winds up actually dying now in this version of the movie, where she didn't in the original version. And it's a bitter death, because Brandy has to sit there witnessing the person that she loved and really technically losing her for the second time, because she lost her before when they reset it. And now Clara's been shot and she's dying in her arms. And this is the new end of the movie, where they repeat the famous line from the original film, but now it has different context, which is kind of the ending of this is how I think Hollywood imagines that their remakes are going to go, and the rest of this before that, the ending that they filmed, is how Hollywood's remakes usually go, which is a disaster. So I like that ending to it. I like that twist to it, and we then find out after the on Streamberry, which is Black Mirror's tongue-in-cheek nod and wink to the Netflix, which is the platform they're on. They're so cheeky. Brandy winds up going home after the show is a success, and she gets a box, and in that box it is a laptop, and apparently it's the AI version of the audition tape that the actual Dorothy Chambers had, and now it's connected to this phone that they give her. So Dorothy, Brandy are introduced to each other through this, and they can talk to each other now, and that's how it ends. Now it leaves it very open. I'm going to talk about references and other things that are kind of hinted at here. Again, I mentioned before, there is a solid leaning into remakes and the trend of remakes and how often they don't really work out. I know, let's address the political thing here and get this out the way. I know that there are people, and I've seen people think that this is a woke thing, blah, 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 blah. And then there's other people who are all rah, rah, rah about it. Like this is the first time they've ever seen a lesbian romance in a movie before or a TV show. And again, as always, the extremes always get everything all wrong. Just because there is a lesbian couple in this thing, and it's because they're dealing with the subject of remakes and gender and race swapping, does not mean that they're cheerleading it. And one way you could actually look, as I said before, at the interpretation that these remakes don't work, because again, the first half of the actual movie within the movie that they were trying to film, it's terrible. The tone is off, Brandy's acting is off, and that's it. By the way, a big shout out to Issa Rae and Emma Corrin, who played the two main leads in this episode of Black Mirror. They did an amazing job, not only of playing themselves, but they were playing different characters, because Emma has to play Dorothy Chambers as Dorothy Chambers, realizing her and being able to finally live out her desire to be who she was and be a lesbian and be able to have a relationship. And she's also got to play the character she was playing and play that character in different ways and with the old accents from 80 years ago that people had. Brandy too she's got to play like she's acting terribly, and then she's got to play she's acting seriously while she's acting all of it. It's like a lot of layers of stuff in this episode, which makes it very, very unique. So personally for me, I'm not a person who goes, it's about lesbians, everything is great, or it's about lesbians, it's woke and it's garbage. It's like, that has nothing to do with any of this. It is referenced, they are making commentary on it, they're presenting it, but they're not telling you what to think about it necessarily. And another way you can look at it is because it's a remake, the ending of the remake winds up being better than the original and being a lot more emotional. Even the producer in the story acknowledges this. I do like the reference to, again, the deep fake controversy that at some point in time in the very near future, you're going to be able to do these things. We've already seen it. A lot of the Disney movies have done it, and Star Wars and other stuff like that, where they've put Mark Hamill's face and Carrie Fisher's face and other actors' faces on characters that they played, but those actors have either passed away or they look different now. Obviously, Mark Hamill's a lot older now than when he was playing Luke Skywalker in the 1970s, but they can have his voice and put his face on a body that will look 90% photorealistic at this point. And this technology of people, I mean, this is probably a big money cow, and I mentioned it before. If they develop technology where the average person can go into an actual movie, you know, Disney would be the first one to do it at like a Walt Disney World or something, where you can now go and be Casablanca actually in Casablanca. There is something to be said too about this being a callback not only to old movies, but as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a callback to a prior episode of Black Mirror in many ways, which is my favorite episode of Black Mirror, probably one of my favorite episodes of any streaming TV show, which was the San Junipero episode back in season 3, which again was about two closeted lesbians, because I'm assuming from what you saw in this, Brandy was also a closeted lesbian. Two closeted lesbians who had these lives outside but meet each other in this virtual reality space, fall in love in a virtual reality space. I do think San Junipero did it a lot better as far as I love that story a lot better. I felt more to that couple if we're going to compare the two. There's also questions in this episode about AI and can people have a romance with AI? That is something that's also probably coming in the future. As scary as it may be for some of us today, it might not be scary in the future. Who knows? We're not there yet. But there is a question about that. I think this AI, Clara, in the story definitely passes the Turing test and how Brandy reacts to it. There is something to be said about taking an old story and actually making a new story out of it, which is what Hotel Reverie actually is. It is a retelling in a way of a classical romantic 1920s, 1930s, 1940s Casablanca kind of story. So they're doing kind of a double thing here by, again, me saying that the actual attempt to remake word for word, line for line, isn't going to work. You can't recapture that. You can't go back and do that again. But you can take the essence of the storyline and a romance set in that period and put something different in there. And it really wasn't about the period. It really wasn't about that this was in the 1940s and they were using AI or they were doing this and it was in black and white or any of that stuff. The core of this, again, is a love story and what people would do for love, even in the strangest of ways, where you have two closeted lesbian actors connecting through an AI where they would have never met before in life, and they were able to find love with each other. That's an extraordinary idea. It's an extraordinary type of story that, again, Black Mirror is known for. So there's a lot of cool stuff here. Now, there's open-ended questions, too, at the end of it. Does Brandy wind up forging a relationship with the casting call AI of Dorothy that she found? Is that real? Is that where she's going with this? Does she become obsessed with it and never leave the house? Does she try to find her way into there? I don't know. There's a lot of this is open-ended, and I appreciate that, again, with Black Mirror. And again, why I say I don't think, even though I do think that the writers clearly, because this is the second time they've done this kind of story, have their political leanings, I don't feel that this is pushing it on the audience. I feel that this is a cool idea. What if this? What if that? What if we read it? There was a technology, which probably is going to happen very soon, where you could be an actor in any movie you wanted to be. And what if you could then gender swap and race swap that way, and you could be that character, and then what scenarios could pop up out of that? And I think this was the scenario they chose, and I thought it was a very interesting one. The love affair was bittersweet. The ending was fairly sad, and there is a little bit of classic storytelling in here, and I'm not sure if it was intended or not, but I heard someone else recently talk about how things like Hotel Reverie as a representation of classic art, something that's an institution or whatever. I think that he said something to the effect of that there's a soul in there, and that a lot of what we do today, a lot of what certain institutions do today, is take the soul that's in this body that should be cherished, that is this thing that stood the test of time, and instead of trying to reinvigorate that spirit, there are people just picking it apart. and being parasites and kind of tearing away at it and trying to suck whatever they can out of the life of it. And you can see that for what the redream thing is here, and in the kind of callous way in which the redream representative talks about, not even when Brandy's in trouble in there, she kind of just not caring. She's like, all right, let's get to the end of the movie, right? And we're just trying to pick, that's what they started out with. We need to make money off this old property, so we're going to suck it dry of everything that's in there. But there's a soul in there, and we're supposed to preserve it. And Brandy tries to preserve it, but the tragedy is she couldn't. And there's an analogies to many other archetypes in literature and in storytelling over the years. This is also kind of similar to why Pinocchio had to go into the belly of the whale to save his father. It's the same kind of thing here. Brandy is going into the belly of the whale, which is this movie that this actress was known for when she was faking her life to try to save this kindred soul that she's in love with in the belly of this whale, in the belly of this carcass. Unfortunately, in this case, it's a tragedy because Brandy doesn't succeed, or does she? Again, it's open-ended about the ending with her having the audition tape, but I want to know what you guys thought about this episode. I enjoyed it very much. This is one of those bittersweet Black Mirror episodes. They can go one way or the other. Sometimes you get ones like I said, like San Junipero, and what was the one, Hang the DJ, where it's kind of a happy ending. And then you get ones like these where it's kind of a sad ending. So let me know what you guys thought. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I will see you guys here for more reviews as we continue to watch Season 7 of Black Mirror right here on the Rantin Review Entertainment. Have a good day.